There, this is David Newton speaking. I've got a topic to cover today that can increase both your wealth and your happiness pretty much at the same time. And it could possibly cure quite a lot of other ills that you may have, and it won't cost you anything to summon and get going in your life. If you don't know what it is, it's the topic of enthusiasm. Now, enthusiasm can come in a lot of ways. It isn't necessarily the rah, rah, rah and everything like that that you might see at seminars and so forth, although that could possibly be one way of displaying it, or you go to a particular football match or game or something like that, and everybody's out there going blah, 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 or, they've got a musician appears on stage and everyone's going crazy. That's great in those circumstances, but what about in your day-to-day business life? What you're doing on a day-to-day basis in your work. You might work in sales, for example, and you're looking for a way how to get ahead and make things work. One thing that I found many years ago when I read a book from Frank Bettger, I'll say that name again, Frank Bettger. I know it's an unusual sounding name, but he wrote a book called How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. And when I read this book, I originally bought a copy of this book when I was running my very first business. I had a retail store, and a copy of this book was literally on the window opposite my store in the arcade where I was in. There was a secondhand shop across the road, which had, apart from clothing and a few different things, they had quite a lot of books in there. And one thing that seemed to grab my attention, apart from a few books that were there in the crammed up, probably because they were running out of room, crammed up in the front window, was Frank Bettger's book on how I raised myself from failure to success in selling. Now, curiosity got the better of me. And one day I thought, having a bit of maybe just a quiet time in my retail shop, I walked across the other side and I said, that book that you've got in the front window, the lady went to, track it down, and it was sort of shoved in there with a few other different books that were there all at the front, obviously nicely presented. And I said, I want that particular book. And without a question at all, she pulled it out of the display. I purchased it. And then I started reading it. And one of the very early chapters in the book was about enthusiasm. Now, I want to share this with you because there is an interesting little story behind it. Because this particular chapter, Frank Bettger, before he became a salesman selling insurance in the early 20th century, we're talking here 1907, he was playing for a team playing baseball. And mere fact, he was a young man. He was playing baseball, and he got the sack one day, and he asked his boss why he got the sack. Now, let me just show you something. Okay. Now, what I've got here in front of you here is his particular book here, How One Idea Multiplied My Income and Happiness. I'll just read this out to you because it is pretty important. Shortly after I started out as a professional baseball player, I got one of the biggest shocks of my life. That was way back in 1907. I was playing for Johnstown, Pennsylvania, in the Tri-State League. I was a young and ambitious, wanted to get on top. And what happened? I was fired. My whole life might have been different if I hadn't gone to the manager and asked him why he fired me. In fact, I wouldn't have had the rare privilege of writing this book if I hadn't asked him that question. The manager said he fired me because I was lazy. Well, that was the last thing that I expected him to say. He said, you drag yourself around the field like a veteran who has been playing ball for 20 years, he told me. Why you act that way as if you're not lazy? Well, Bert, I said, I'm so nervous, so scared that I wanted to hide my fear from the crowd and especially from the other players of the team Besides, I hope that by taking it easy, I'll get rid of my nervousness. Frank, he said, it will never work. That's the thing that's holding you down. Whatever you do after you leave here, for heaven's sake, wake yourself up and put some life and enthusiasm into your work. I had been making $175 a month at Johnstown. By the way, this is 1907, mind you. $175 a month at Johnstown. After being fired there, I went down to Chester, Pennsylvania, in the Atlantic League, and they paid me only $25 a month. Well, I couldn't feel very enthusiastic on that kind of money, but I began to act enthusiastic. After I was there 3 days, an old ball player, Danny Meyer, came up to me and said, Frank, what in the world are you doing down here in the rank with a league like this? Well, Danny, I replied, if I knew how to get a better job, I'd go anywhere. A week later, Danny induced New Haven, Connecticut, and to give me a trial. My first day in New Haven will always stand out in my memory as a great event in my life. No one knew me in that league. So I made a resolution that nobody would ever accuse me of being lazy. I made up my mind to establish the reputation of being the most enthusiastic ball player they'd ever seen in New England League. I thought if I could establish such a reputation, then I'd have to live up to it. From the minute that I appeared on the field, I acted like a man electrified. I acted as though I was alive with a million batteries. I threw the ball around the diamond so fast, so hard, that it almost knocked out the infielders' hands apart. Once, apparently, trapped, I slid into third base with so much energy and force that the third baseman fumbled the ball, and I was able to score an important run. Yes, it was all show and act I was putting on. The thermometer on that day was nearly 100, or 40 degrees Celsius if you were in Australia. I wouldn't have been surprised if I had dropped over with sunstroke on the way I ran around the field. Did it work? It worked like magic. 3 things happened. My enthusiasm almost entirely overcome my fear. In fact, my nervousness began to work for me, and I played far better than I'd ever thought I was ever capable of playing. If you are nervous, be thankful. Don't hold it back. Turn it on and let your nerves work for you. My enthusiasm affected other players on the team, and they too became enthusiastic. 3, instead of dropping with the heat, I felt better during the game, and after it was over, more than I felt before. My biggest thrill came from the following morning when I read the New Haven newspaper. This new player, Bettger, has a barrel of enthusiasm. He inspired our boys. They not only won the game, but looked better at that time this season than any time this season. The newspaper began calling me Pep Bettger, the life of the team. I mailed the newspaper clippings to Bert Conn, the manager of Johnstown. Can you imagine his expression on his face when he read Pep Bettger, the dumb guy that he tied to a can 3 weeks earlier for being lazy? Within 10 days, my enthusiasm took me from $25 a month to $185 a month. It increased my income by 700%. Let me repeat, nothing but the determination to act increased my income 700% in 10 days. I got this stupendous increase in salary, but not because I could throw the ball better or catch or hit it better, not because I had more ability as a ball player. I didn't know any more about baseball than I did before. 2 years later, 2 years from the time I was hoping to get $25 a month in a little Chester outfit, I was playing third base for St. Louis Cardinals and had multiplied my income 30 times over. What did it? Enthusiasm alone did it. Nothing but enthusiasm. 2 years after, while playing the game in Chicago against the Chicago Cubs, I had an accident. Picking up my swing bunt while on full run, I attempted to throw in the opposite direction and something snapped in my arm. That accident forced me to give up baseball. This seemed like a great tragedy to me at the time, but I now look back on it as one of the most fortunate events in my life. I returned home for the next 2 years and made a living riding around the streets of Philadelphia on a bicycle. I was a collector for an installment furniture concern, $1 down, and the balance in uneasy weekly payments. After 2 dismal years of collecting installments, I decided to try selling insurance with Fidelity Mutual Life Insurance Company. The next 10 months were the longest and most disheartening months of my life. A dismal failure at selling insurance, I finally concluded that I was never cut out to be a salesman and began answering want ads for the job as a shipping clerk. I realized, however, that no matter what work I would do, I had to overcome a strange fear complex that possessed me. So I joined a Dale Carnegie course in public speaking. One night, Mr. Carnegie, and wait for it, in the middle of the talk said, "Mr. Bettger," he said, just a moment. Are you interested in what you're saying?" I said, "Yes, of course I am," I replied. "Well, then," Mr. Carnegie said, "why don't you talk with a little enthusiasm?" How do you expect your audience to be interested if you don't put some life into and animation into what you say? Dale Carnegie then gave our class a stirring talk on the power of enthusiasm. He got so excited during his talk that he threw the chair up against the wall and broke off one of its legs. Before I went to bed that night, I sat for an hour thinking. My thoughts went back to the baseball days at Johnstown and New Haven. For the first time, I realized the very fault had threatened to wreck my career in baseball was now threatening to wreck my career as a salesman. The decision I made that night was a turning point in my life. That decision was to stay in the insurance business and put some enthusiasm into selling that I had into playing baseball when I joined the New Haven team. I shall never forget the first call I made the next day. It was a crashing through session. I made up my mind that I was going to show my prospect the most enthusiastic salesman he'd ever seen in his life. As I pounded my fist with excitement, I expected every minute to have the man stop me and ask me if there was anything wrong with me, but he didn't. At one stage of the interview, I noticed he raised himself to a more erect position and was opening his eyes in wonder, but he never stopped me, except to ask questions. Did he throw me out? No, he bought. This man, Al Emons, a grain merchant in the Bourse building at Philadelphia, soon became one of my good friends and best boosters. From that day on, I began to sell the magic of enthusiasm. It began to work for me in business just as it had in baseball. I wouldn't want to give anyone the impression that I think enthusiasm of the fist pounding, but if fist pounding is what you need to arouse yourself inside, then I am overwhelmingly for it. I know this. When I force myself to act enthusiastic, I soon feel enthusiastic. During my 32 years of selling, I have seen enthusiasm double and triple the income of dozens of salesmen, and I have seen the lack of it cause hundreds of salesmen to fail. I firmly believe enthusiasm is the biggest selling single factor in successful selling. I know a man who has an authority on insurance, but he couldn't even write a book on the subject, and yet he can't make a decent living selling it. Why? Largely because of his lack of enthusiasm. I know another salesman who didn't know 1/10 as much about insurance and yet made a fortune selling it and retired in 20 years. His name is Stanley Gettis. He now lives in Miami Beach, Florida. The reason for his outstanding success was not knowledge, it was enthusiasm. Can you acquire enthusiasm, or must you be born with it? Certainly you can acquire it. Stanley Gettis acquired it. He became a human dynamo. How? Just by forcing yourself each day to act enthusiastic. As a part of this plan, Stanley Gettis, and I will go for that at another time. Look, the point I want to make here is that Frank Bettger took himself from failure to success, and in the process multiplied his income 7 times over, 700%, all within a very short period of time, all because he was enthusiastic. And I made mention there before of Dale Carnegie. As a matter of fact, Dale Carnegie does say in his courses, and I have actually been to a Dale Carnegie course many years ago, obviously, and Dale Carnegie had said, if you act enthusiastic, you'll be enthusiastic. That's a good saying to go with. If you want to increase your income, don't just, drag your feet around the place and, act like as though, it's just another day, and bury your head in the telephone when you're walking up the street and so forth like that. Show some interest and enthusiasm in life. Show some interest and enthusiasm in your ideas. Show some interest and enthusiasm in the people that are talking to you and listen to them enthusiastically. Show enthusiasm in your work, in your business, and in possibilities, and in your partner, in everything that's there around you. Be thankful and enthusiastic. There are a lot of things there that you can actually do each day which can bring you great joy, and it will multiply your enthusiasm. If you're enthusiastic, people want to hang around with you. They'll want to stay with you. They'll want to say, I want what that person's got. Maybe I should hang out with them. Maybe I should take them out for coffee. That's what's going to happen for you and with you if you show enthusiasm. Some people may not like that enthusiasm, and maybe they may not be the people that are for you. Who knows? I don't know. But the people that are attracted to your enthusiasm are going to love it, and they're going to want to share it and have time with you. And that could be your customers. That could be the people that you want to do business with. That could be, could be anything from the bank manager that you're getting a loan for your house or your property or business for. Could be motivated just by the enthusiasm and feel that you have inside for you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the fist thumping on the table type of enthusiasm. It can be a quiet belief inside you that, hey, this is going to work. I feel strongly about this. I'm going to get up early in the morning and enjoy myself and make the most out of this day because I'm having a great time and I want everyone else around me to have some of that fun too. So there you go. This is a great idea. I hope it works for you. And Dale Carnegie did endorse that particular chapter. I encourage you to look at Frank Bettger's book, How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. It's a very good book, well worthwhile tracking down. This is David Newton speaking, and I hope you have a great day.